right, you guys. This is Dr. Craig Detweiler. Very excited to just have this quick conversation. Will you just say hi to us, please?
Yo, hello.
Thanks for taking the time, man. No,
You got it, doctor?
I really appreciate it. So we're using your book, Selfies, for a class at Kuiper College, and the class is called uh, Christian Formation in the Age of Social Media. And so we are in the fourth week. In the first 2 weeks, what I wanted to do was here's some documentaries. What are our prejudgments, or what are ideas? What are our ideas about the internet, social media, that kind of thing? Then last week we started your book, Selfies, and yeah, and so this is just a conversation about it. I have a couple of questions in light of some of the things that the students wrote, but yeah, man, I'm pretty excited to have this conversation. Will you, real quickly though, tell us a little bit about yourself? Just a quick bio, if you will.
Sure. So, yeah, my name's Craig Detweiler, and I'm originally from North Carolina
Okay.
and have always loved movies, media, all things TV, pop music, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So as technology shifted kind of from the big screen to the small screen in our hand,
Yeah.
I decided to shift with it. And not being a digital native, I had to kind of turn that expertise over to like my kids
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
allow them to talk to me about, what does Instagram mean to you, or why do you love Snapchat, and
Right.
just try to get into their headspace
Right.
and really be a student more than a professor.
But you wrote well, you have wrote several books on this, and well, we're using the Selfies book. Um, and last week I wanted to start thinking through like what is the self, what is the self online. We'll eventually talk about. This week we're looking at that online interaction, and we're really having to reframe. Hopefully we'll reframe some of that and thinking through technology, but.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things that I think consistently shows up in the insights, because they have to write some insights about your book, like insights to them, is this idea that uh, we've, well, honestly, it's the image of God stuff that just keeps popping up. How do we redeem the selfie so that we can, uh, we can show the image of God, and like I love all the insights into taking a couple of seconds or even just a couple of minutes to ponder and not judge right away. But can you tell me how that idea developed, and like I'm like where did that come from? We read the book, but like, can you give us kind of
Yeah. Well, my theological method has always been kind of going from our experience then into scripture and trying to figure out like how do I find God based on what I'm already experiencing.
well, finding God is like you do that in everything, like in every book, every talk I've ever heard. You're
Well, I don't want to overdo it, but it's more like if there's something that's kind of major in your life where you've been really consistently moved, or moved to tears, or inspired to create, or inspired to respond. I
right,
don't care whether that's a movie, a song, a show, or a selfie.
right,
I want to try to get inside that experience.
right.
And so just in looking at selfies, both why we do it, and then also why we get so upset about other people's selfies.
Right. Right.
I'm trying to deal with this notion of like, well, okay, so I'm okay when I do it, but when you do it, you're clearly selfish and self-promotional,
Right.
right? But when I do it, I'm clearly okay because I know what I'm doing, and
But
I know my reasons.
but it doesn't look any different.
Right. Correct.
So
Correct.
so a couple of us, well, a couple of the students were saying, like, how do we redeem the selfie then? Like, it's not really what it looks like, because like we just said, it all looks the same. But maybe we could do a selfie in such a way that we can redeem it and really show the image of God? Like, how would you do that? Like, if I were to take up that challenge, you
Correct.
know, and I think I want to, you know, just to
Yes.
challenge myself. Like, what would that look like? I'm just asking you, like, or how would you do it? I mean, I guess I have
I
my
think
own
it. Well, I
conception.
think if you look, I mean, that's why I looked at self-imaging throughout history to say there's kind of the self-aggrandizing portrait, right? There's like the portrait that kings and queens and the
Yeah.
rich commissioned to
Right.
make themselves look grand,
Yes.
which we can do those kind of selfies.
Right.
But
But
then there's those honest self-portraits, right, where we might be a little more honest about our questions or our hauntedness or our frailty. And that when we see that in Van Gogh or Michelangelo or Caravaggio, or even more contemporary, with Andrew Warhol or Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo, she's expressing her deepest psychological pains and aches
yeah.
through her self-portraits.
Right. Wow.
So it's sort of challenging us to kind of create a more honest selfie, which may be a more honest way to glorify God in the process.
Well, like when you're describing, well, what kings used to do hundreds of years ago, like that took time, right? They would sit there, and they'd have to pose for it. Ours takes like a second.
True.
It takes a second, but I think what we have is we get to add the text. You know,
That's true. Comment.
We get to
The frame.
explain.
That's kind of the frame.
Right. So it's not just the picture.
Yeah, the interpretive lens.
But then even though I write something specific from my perspective, someone can read that, and pull whatever
and misread it. Right.
Right.
Well, I think some of our best selfies are certainly our most memorable selfies. Sometimes it does take time because it's like we've got to climb up that mountain, or we've got to put on together that persona, or we've got to wait for that graduation.
Right.
It's like that graduation selfie. Well, that's 12 years in the making, or that's 4 years in the making.
Right. Oh, okay. So it does take time. I mean, you're capturing that moment, but it's all of that. So then, when you talk about the image of God, is it like showing? Is it showing His characteristics through our selfies? Is it His handiwork? His
even the act of taking selfies is a godlike act because we are God's selfies.
Yes.
So we have a self-imaging God.
So people experience God through us.
And through the act of creating it itself. We're experiencing, we are in a godlike position.
Because everything.
Or reflecting God's glory.
And everything that was created has ability to create more. And humans, have this ability. So you're connecting that Genesis 1 idea to what we're doing. Oh, I like that.
We don't think of God as a self-imaging God. But we are God's selfies.
Yes.
Right? So for us to be then self-imaging is to reflect the glory of God even in what we're doing.
So how would I compose that? Or does it matter?
Well, I mean, if you want to get back to the garden, you think of Adam and Eve and a certain freedom that they had, right? And a certain nakedness, right? But nakedness can be thought of in a lot of different ways. So I mean, there's sort of a non-guardedness,
right,
in how they were approaching each other, right?
Right.
So it wasn't about projecting a false image, but being so comfortable in their own skin that they didn't even need to dress it up.
But there's a fine line between narcissism.
Oh yeah.
And like, this is the image of God. We're trying to redeem.
Oh, I understand. We're post-fall. I understand. We're trying to get back to the garden. I mean, that's the whole game.
But what you're saying is we can use the tool. Why not use the tool to do this?
When we recognize that pre-fall desire to create and to be free and to be face to face and to be naked and unashamed, if
Mm-hmm.
we can get to that in how we approach each other,
Yes.
right?
Right.
In our communities and in our day-to-day interactions, then we've actually gotten somewhere.
Right.
And so we want to do that in our interpersonal relationships, and we also want to do that, I think, in our online relationships as well. But we don't have a lot of practice, right?
Right.
Because it's mostly about posing, striking a pose or projecting a false image,
as opposed to reflecting the image of God. Now, here's the deal. Like when in my study of the image of God, in my study of the Imago Dei, you cannot separate the Imago Dei from the Missio Dei, right? So,
mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
people just talk about the image of God, but it means something. Like when you talk about the image of God, it means that you do the work of God.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, and I think maybe the reason why we struggle to do the work of God, the Missio Dei, is because we actually don't see each other as God sees us. So it would be easier for us to cross the street or cross our community or care for that other person if we more readily understood that person as being created in the image of God.
You know, one of the new things that's come up for me in just facilitating this class is like I'm seeing in some of what they're writing, and even just in like in conversations with people, like we tend to what's the word I'm looking for? We tend to like demonize the social media.
Big
That
time.
makes sense.
Big time.
As if the social media, well, social media is amoral. The internet is amoral,
Right.
right? It
It's
does
us.
exactly.
It's us using. Yeah.
Right. It does exactly what we want it to do. But the interesting thing for me this time reading your book is, you know, yes, we're redeeming the selfie. We're showing the image of God. But there's something about like something that you just said, like when we're not able to see the other person and we're just looking at the image of the other person. We're like then we're interacting with the image and not the person. That's what you're
Correct.
saying, right?
And we're reducing them to skin color or to gender, right? We so quickly get into issues of why we separate each other based on race or sexuality or all those kinds of things.
Right.
And, you know, so I think so much of our antipathy towards social media and particularly towards the selfie is a lot of misogyny. It's a lot of you know, bagging on women and their image and their efforts to prop up themselves. And so I think it's getting into a lot of the church's discomfort with women's discomfort with their own image, and women's judgment both towards each other and other people's judgment of women.
But then also, I think in looking at a selfie or even taking a selfie, we can avoid our work. We can avoid
totally
like our insecurity, and we can avoid, you know, like you know, it's a lot easier, you know, to not see ourselves as well.
That's it.
And that's what you're saying.
That's it. But and that the great self images throughout history came through like thoughtful study.
Right.
Of like, who am I really?
Because it's a skill. You have to learn how to see the image of God in the selfie, right? And so instead of picking on the picture or judging the picture, why is it my initial reaction to pray for that person?
Right.
Or like if I see them being narcissistic, to pray for like the need for why they needed a post. You know, that's not a natural reaction for us. And that's what I'm seeing, like as I'm reading some of the insights, you're like, they're having to reframe, why is it that I would judge and not pray? Why is it that I don't see the image of God? So it's wow, this is interesting to me, like the redeeming the selfie as a spiritual discipline, maybe?
Yes. Well, and it comes out of an aesthetic understanding of life, to try to understand, to try to see beauty, right? To try to see God in that other person first. Can I see them as God sees them?
Wow, that would change that interaction. That
That's
would
it.
change well, yeah, it would change how you see that person, how you look at that picture. Oh, so I was thinking, oh, I'm going to redeem the selfie. I'm going to do it on my end. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what does it
That's
look like?
part of it. That's
That's
part
part
of
of
it.
it. But then it's also learning how to see it in other people. Because like we said from the beginning, they look the same.
Right.
There's
Right.
no difference.
Well, so even to change our language, right? So we talk about taking a selfie,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we don't have any language of receiving a selfie,
Mm,
because everything on social media is actually, in a sense, is people putting themselves out there in
produce.
vulnerability,
Right.
in risk,
Yes.
um, in self-expression, right? So in a sense, it's all like gift. It might be pulling towards something or begging for something, but it's still people putting themselves out there. And so our job is to receive it to receive it, not to sort of take it and judge it and
No
manipulate.
matter what how it was created. Okay, wow.
How do we receive it?
So how what's the impact on the self when we're projecting, when we're putting it out there, when we're giving out our truth, when we're being vulnerable?
Well, it can be tough, because if we're putting ourselves, if our self-worth is too externally defined,
Right.
then
With
we're
the
getting into a
likes.
dangerous space, right?
Yeah, but
uh,
that stuff's happening. Like
oh,
people's
that's like daily referendum.
self-esteem and ego are based on how many likes and how many whatever they get.
Tough game, because now you're into profile management, which is exhausting.
Well,
Every day is like a win or a loss.
you and I, we had this conversation once about Luke 6:45. Out of the good that a man stores in his heart comes out good things. Out of the evil that a man stores in his heart comes out evil things, and out of the abundance of the heart, we post on social media, right? You post on Facebook, you post
Mm-hmm.
on Snap. So never before have we had access to people's hearts, which I
Yes.
think is wonderful.
Yes.
Um, but if we're posting, can you speak to, like, you're only posting, like, I'll see a picture and I will look at someone's photo, someone's selfie, and I will think this is the whole person, right? Like, it takes discipline for me to, like, realize this is a version, this is a piece, this is. Can you speak to, um, like some people say, like, well, it's counterfeit and it's fake or it's
Right.
curated or edited. From
Yes.
my view, I feel like even if it's fake, it's their truth. It's a truth from their heart. So, like, for me, the false self, how in my concept of the false self, is still true because it comes whatever it is
Yes.
they're editing. Can you speak to the false
Yeah.
self and like the pieces of yourself that you put out there?
Yeah. I would think a better word that is more gracious and Christ-like is perhaps aspirational self.
Okay, keep going.
It's who we aspire to be. It's how we would like to be perceived. It's how we would like to be received.
Man, our two perspectives are, I was just like kind of negative, and you're like positivity. But that's the discipline, right?
That is the discipline.
To learn how to see this, the struggle, the real.
And even to help people, to kind of coach people towards that.
Yeah.
I
One
mean,
of the
if you see somebody who's overly sexualized themselves, the need for Jesus to see them and affirm them is actually even higher.
But as Christians, that's not what we do.
I know. I
We
know.
first judge.
Right. No,
Oh,
that overly sexualized portrait is a desperate cry to say, do you see me? Do
yeah,
you recognize me?
yeah.
And do you love me?
We
And
watched.
what are the conditions?
Yeah, we watched the documentary, and well, a couple of documentaries. A lot of people's egos and sense of identity and value and worth were wrapped around how many followers they had and how many
Sure.
likes they had. But at the end of it, some were able to watch all the way to the end, and they realized like there's a brokenness and there's deep hurt
There it
and
is.
really disturbed people. And but then they put the smiley face up. You know what I mean? They put the happy.
What did Jesus do? Everybody, woman at the well, right?
Yeah.
Zacchaeus, right? It's like they all had a history. They all had something they were trying to cover up. They all had a version of themselves they were trying to project. And he just like reached right past that surface and got right to the heart.
So, wow. So we need to be like that.
Daily invitation.
Yeah.
That's the one.
And well, yeah, and like I was saying earlier, it's easier to judge someone else's selfie than to die to ourselves, reframe and do the work of being Jesus in that. Because the beauty about a selfie is you can respond to it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's an open invitation.
You can write at the bottom or like follow up, like, hey, that was great. What's happening? Or whatever.
Exactly. Just to affirm people, just to say, I see you. Just to respond and literally say, like, hey, you're not alone today.
Yeah. Like to see their humanity, to see their brokenness, all of that.
And to see the aspirational self of what it is they're going for.
Okay, I have to do a little bit of thinking about seeing aspirational self. I mean, it's a new concept. I love it. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. Well,
I mean, that curation of our image is an effort to say, this is my best self. This is who I aspire to be. I don't really get into it until the end of the book, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah, we've only read till chapter 6. So.
Right. Well, so at the end of the book, I get a little bit into the transfiguration of Jesus, which is a foretaste of glory divine.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of what you see in our aspirational selves. It's like, maybe I don't like my nose. Maybe I don't like my, the fact that I've got gray hair, whatever. Right. So you could say, well, I'm going to try to fix my nose right now, or I'm going to dye my hair.
Right.
But that transfiguration, right? That's who we will be.
Right.
On the other side of paradise. It's that preview, that foretaste of glory divine.
Wait, but then we can learn how to see that in other people as well.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
But you can only see that if you've seen it in yourself. Like you can only bring people to where you've been yourself. So if you haven't experienced that kind of grace, if you haven't experienced that kind of transformation,
here.
You can't see that in somebody else.
Here.
Right?
Yep.
And really, that's just kind of sanctification, right? And
that's right.
Kind of righteousness and wisdom, because the wise have trained themselves to discern the difference between what's good and not good, not what's right or wrong. Those people that are focused on rightness, focus on right or wrong. But those that are righteous, those that are wise, they've trained themselves to see differently. That's what you're saying.
That's it.
Oh man, that's beautiful. Just real quickly, where do you think the internet's headed? I know you're not a futurist, but you do.
Well, I am in the sense, it's going to get harder to actually discern the real from the fake.
But the fake is still it's still coming from their heart.
Well, yeah, but I'm even just talking about, like, is that an actual person or is that a bot?
Oh,
right. So that's where, this crisis of kind of the self and identity is going to get tougher, because we're going to get like whole speeches that are faked, right? Where you can actually take somebody's speech and rearrange it and make them say things that they didn't say.
Yeah.
Or look the way that they didn't look. So the desire for authenticity that I think can only maybe come outside of the internet is only going to rise.
Wait, so you're saying authenticity? You say that again?
I'm saying the hunger for authenticity. It's going to be so rare where we actually know, is that real or is that a fake? Right? It's like this rise of fake news, right? The ability to just discern what is real from what is fake or trumped up.
Fake news is real news now.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So discernment is the 21st century need.
But we have the Holy Spirit.
That's discernment.
And the
That's
Holy
discernment.
Spirit, we can test the spirits behind things to see whether it is of God or not, right?
That's correct. The need for discernment will be off the charts. And the other thing that it'll be a need for, I think, is the need for a really embodied faith. So it'll be not enough to just click like or love, but to actually like get in the car, go over to their house, take them a cup of hot soup, and sit on the couch with them.
Right. And then ask them, like interact with them.
And be fully present.
Yeah.
Right? Bodily present.
So you're saying, well, that's not ever going to go away.
Well, we could be the last people who believe in the power of the body.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because most internet folks, certainly the programmers of the world, they don't even dignify the body. They say the body's not as important as the mind or the brain.
Right.
Right? The body is just considered meat space.
Right.
Right? So this is where the incarnation of Jesus, of actually like physically coming into our world and literally entering the neighborhood,
right,
becomes a revolutionary act.
So the incarnation cannot happen online.
It's gonna be, it's great. I just heard about this church that was baptizing some people online. Wow. Right?
Okay.
And it was like a girl who was in a wheelchair who couldn't get to church. Okay, I kind of get that.
Okay.
But would it have been even better to go to her house with the water
right,
and enter into her world?
Right.
Rather than just meeting her online and saying, we're going to virtually baptize you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of still weird.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's fine as a starting point, but it's not sufficient long term.
Embodied, incarnational.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Very cool. So this is a tool, all the social media, internet stuff.
It is an alternative. It's another means. If you remember, if you go back to the original App Store.
Yes.
Right. It was an A, but that A was formed with a paintbrush.
Yeah.
And
ruler.
a pen and a tablet.
Okay.
That's what the A was.
Right.
So all this is a new kind of paintbrush.
Right. And things are changing.
So learn how to use it and use it beautifully and wisely.
Yes. Well, the technology impacts the psychology.
Yes.
Right? New ways of relating, new ways of having friends, all these new different ways. But then I think also the spirituality needs to also keep up or change. If the technology is,
I would say it extends.
Okay. The spirituality needs to extends what?
Into this medium. It's not exclusive. I think we tend to say, like, well, spirituality is Sunday or spirituality is church.
Right.
Or spirituality is my small group. And then we don't say, well, spirituality is not movies or spirituality is not music or spirituality is not social media.
Yeah, one of my concepts is that being online is this disembodied existence, which is very much spiritual space. And so
by definition.
Right. Yeah. And so like this interface allows us to enter into spiritual space.
I hope so. It has to. If I'm going to spend that many hours a day on it, there better be a possibility of finding God in it.
Well, that's so good, man. Well, I don't know how much time I have. I don't know how far. There isn't a clock or anything like that, but I don't want it to like end.
Cut
and miss out on all the stuff. Can you give me your Kuiper insight?
Oh, Kuiper. Yeah. I'm a huge I'm a Kuiperian, perhaps. I don't know. I just loved his notion that, I think he had this whole famous phrase about like the whole world, right? All of the entire created realm is Jesus. God says it is mine, right? So there's nothing that cannot be kind of folded into that as holy, as redeemable, as sacred.
Even this stuff.
That's it.
Online stuff.
So it's very Kuiper College, I think, to get into this and to say, okay, where is God in the midst of this?
Right.
Because we believe in a big God.
Yeah, they're realizing, well, part of the reason why we're teaching this course is no one else is. Like, no one else is jumping in.
It's crazy to me that we would just be like, well, here's your phone. There's no manual. Hope you do well. And I don't think there's any God in it. It's all bad. But anyway, hope you spend less than 18 hours a day on it. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's not all bad.
It's not all bad.
And we can find God in it.
That's it.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Professor, you're the best.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try I'm gonna start tomorrow. I wanted to have this conversation first with you to get a little bit more clarity on the redeeming the selfie. But
yeah, take those selfie challenges. I want to see them. I want to see them post their pictures online.
Yeah, man. We'll
or at least post a review of the book when you finish.
Okay. Yeah.
Go to Amazon or Goodreads or somewhere and just give me a paragraph about what you thought.
If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Because of my kids, I started on Instagram through this project.
So then Instagram then.
Well, you can Instagram me. I'm not on Snapchat. That's just like out of courtesy to my kids. Give them a little space.
I'll tag you on some of mine so that people can find you.
Cool.
Yeah. And if we
I think I'm Craig Det on Instagram, and then you just find me on my name at Facebook and Twitter.
All right, cool.
Yep.
Well, thanks for the conversation, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for reading the book. I felt that extra $1 in my pocket, from each person. So
right on. All right.
I'm gonna treat my wife to lunch. Maybe I can't afford dinner, but maybe lunch on all the money I made.
That's cool. All right, man.
All right.